In 2015, Canadians believed real change was coming with affordable homes and brighter futures. But 10 years later, the families who once cheered a new leader now face rents higher than their monthly income, and young professionals need six-figure salaries just to dream of owning a home. Trudeau is gone, replaced amid crisis, and even immigrants are packing up for better prospects elsewhere. What went so wrong that everyone is quietly leaving? And why is almost no one willing to talk about it? The story starts with promises and an economic shock no one saw coming. In October 2015, Canadians lined up at polling stations in numbers not seen in decades. The promise was clear: a new era led by Justin Trudeau would bring affordable homes and a fair shot for the middle class. The campaign's message, real change, struck a chord with families squeezed by years of stagnation. For a young Toronto renter, the hope was simple: a future where her children could afford more than a basement apartment, where hard work meant stability, not just survival. The country handed Trudeau a strong mandate. Voter turnout climbed to 68%, the highest since 1993. Optimism swept through crowded city centres and quiet rural towns alike. The government pledged to build 1 million new homes by 2025, cut taxes for the middle class, and protect the social safety net. For a while it seemed possible, but as the years passed, the gap between promise and reality only widened. Wages stalled while costs climbed. The dream of home ownership drifted further out of reach. Frustration simmered in kitchen table conversations and echoed in Parliament. By January 2025, the mood had changed. Trudeau resigned under pressure, leaving behind a country more divided and anxious than before. Parliament fell silent, prorogued for months as uncertainty settled over Ottawa. In March 2025, Mark Carney, an economist with a reputation for caution, took the oath as Canada's 24th Prime Minister. The sense of hope that once united voters had fractured, replaced by doubt and a growing sense that the system itself was no longer working for ordinary Canadians. For families hoping to buy a home, the numbers simply do not add up. The average price for a home in Canada stands above $670,000. At today's interest rates, that means that a family would need an income close to $170,000 a year just to qualify for a mortgage. In cities like Vancouver, the gap grows even wider. There, the average detached home costs well over $1 million, with some listings for small, aging bungalows approaching $2 million. Yet the median household income in Vancouver is less than a quarter of what is needed to buy in the city's core. Toronto tells a similar story. New home sales have dropped to record lows, with just over 5,000 sold in 2025, nearly 30,000 below the 10-year average. Nationally, home sales in December 2025 fell another 7.4% year over year as buyers retreated from a market that feels out of reach. The government response, Build Canada Homes, launched in January 2026 with a promise to add supply. But the initial target of 4,000 units barely scratches the surface of what is required. In the meantime, construction starts in Toronto have fallen to their lowest level in 3 decades. For a young family, the reality is stark. The dream of ownership now means facing impossible math, saving for decades, or giving up altogether. The promise of a home, once the cornerstone of the Canadian middle class, has become a moving target, slipping further away with each passing year. Canada's rental market has become a battleground. The national vacancy rate sits at just 1.5%, the lowest ever recorded. In major cities, it is not unusual for hundreds of hopeful tenants to compete for a single apartment. Listings that once drew a handful of inquiries now attract lines out the door and inboxes overflowing with desperate messages. For families, the search for shelter has turned into a full-time job, one that does not guarantee results. Landlords holding all the power have pushed rents to new heights. In some cases, monthly rates have jumped by thousands of dollars in a single year. There are reports of rents climbing by as much as $7,000, forcing long-time tenants to pack up overnight. The pressure is not limited to big cities. Even smaller communities are feeling the squeeze, as more Canadians chase fewer available homes. With nowhere to go, renters are forced into impossible choices, paying more than half their income on housing, skipping meals, or falling behind on bills. The promise of stability has vanished. For many, the fear is not just losing a home, it is not knowing if another one can ever be found. An empty fridge has become a common sight in homes across Canada. The lines at food banks now stretch around city blocks, even in neighbourhoods that once seemed immune to hardship. In March 2025, food banks recorded more than 2.2 million visits, a number that has doubled since 2019. These are not just the unemployed or those on social assistance. 1 in 5 people seeking help has a full-time job, but paychecks no longer cover the basics. Grocery prices have climbed nearly 30% in 5 years, outpacing wage growth and leaving families to make impossible choices. Rent or food, heat or medicine. For a young family in a rented apartment, dinner often means skipping meals so the children can eat. In Ontario, more than a quarter of households now face food insecurity. Across the country, over 10 million people worry about where their next meal will come from. The margin for error is razor thin. One unexpected bill and a third of Canadians could be within $200 of insolvency. Food banks, overwhelmed by demand, have begun turning people away. The promise of a stable, middle-class life has been replaced by the daily struggle to put food on the table. A steady stream of talent is flowing out of Canada, and the reasons are written in the numbers. In 2024, more than 106,000 people left the country for good. That was the highest figure in decades. Nearly half headed to the United States, chasing better pay and more opportunity. For young professionals in tech, the calculation is stark. A composite Toronto software engineer, once drawn by the promise of a vibrant startup scene, now finds her peers packing up for Seattle or Austin. Each year, thousands of skilled workers make the same move, drawn by higher salaries and lower living costs south of the border. It is not just individuals making these choices. Canadian companies are investing record sums outside the country, wary of a business climate dominated by a handful of powerful players. 3 telecom giants control 90% of the wireless market, leaving Canadians with phone bills up to 20 times higher than in Finland. The big banks and grocery chains operate with little real competition, charging fees and prices that quietly drain household budgets. As talent and investment leave, productivity stumbles. Since 2019, Canada's output per worker has slipped, while the United States continues to pull ahead. The feedback loop is clear. As the best and brightest walk away, the system grows less dynamic, and the promise of prosperity drifts even further out of reach. In early 2026, a new threat arrived from beyond Canada's borders. The United States, led by Donald Trump, announced plans for a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. For manufacturers in Ontario and Quebec, the warning was clear. Jobs and exports were now in the crosshairs. Auto plants, aluminum smelters and lumber mills braced for impact. With every new headline, investors pulled back and the pressure on the Canadian dollar mounted. Inside the country, the housing crisis fractured along regional lines. While Toronto and Vancouver watched condo prices slide, projected to fall another 2.5% through the year. Smaller cities like Regina and Quebec City saw prices climb toward record highs. Nationally, home price growth slowed to just 1%, leaving buyers uncertain and sellers desperate. Construction sites across the country fell silent. Industry groups warned that up to 100,000 jobs could vanish if demand did not return. Interest rates remained stubbornly high, putting mortgages and business loans out of reach for many. Meanwhile, climate policies once championed in Ottawa faded from the agenda as fossil fuel projects regained priority. The dream of stability, of a future built on hard work, felt more distant than ever. For some, the only choice left was to leave. For those who stayed, the question was simple: how much longer could they hold on? Today, more Canadians are leaving than at any point in over half a century, driven not by hope, but by necessity. As the cost of staying outweighs the cost of leaving, the meaning of home is up for grabs. What happens next will define Canada's future. Share your thoughts below.